This is the Financial Beat, helping you hit all the right notes in your financial plan. So sit back as we strike up the band. The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler starts now.
Welcome to another exciting edition of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial. Wherever you are in Southern California today, we thank you for being with us. I'm Ron Stutz, and we're going to talk, as always, about getting you to and through retirement. And Logan, it's great to be back with you.
Yeah, great to be here, Ron. Looking forward to a great show.
We have a lot of interesting things to talk about today, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But first of all, let me put your phone number out there for folks who might like a discovery meeting. We talk about that all the time, and we'll talk more about it later on in the show today. But the important phone number to remember for Regary Financial is 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Call that number. You can arrange to have a discovery meeting, and it won't cost you a penny, and there's no obligation either. One more time, it's 888-823-PLAN. And let's talk about some outdated rules. You know, a lot of people out there make assumptions on things that they've heard in the past, and they assume that all those things are still the same. And, of course, some things have changed in the financial world. Just like your iPhone gets old and needs to be replaced, you know, I know they design them that way, so you have to go out and buy another one.
Good point.
The way that some people think about retirement is absolutely obsolete and needs to be updated, and you can do that. Tell us about these specific rules, Logan, and tell us if they're outdated or still useful. One thing that we hear about a lot is the 4% rule. What is that, and is it still appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I think we've talked about quite a bit on the show, and it's something a lot of people out there when they come into the discovery meetings or I'm meeting with people and talking about income planning and things like that, the 4% rule does tend to come up quite frequently. And, you know, basically, what is the 4% rule? So it basically was used by Wall Street as kind of a standard where you could take approximately 4% out of your balance of a stock bond portfolio each year without typically worrying about running out of money, right? So I think the rule was founded, don't quote me exactly on this, but somewhere, I think it was around 1994 or somewhere in that frame. Mm-hmm. And essentially speaking, right, Ron, you could take 4% per year out. And they were saying, you know, you could essentially adjust it for inflation every so many years at about a 2% inflation increase. And it was typically invested normally between 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds. There's some reports out there, maybe 50% in stocks and 50% in bonds. But really, that's kind of the whole point is you could take approximately 4% out, and it should last you approximately 30 years with adjusting for inflation, right? So if you had $1 million saved for retirement, you could take approximately $40,000 a year out, and it should be a safe amount to take out over that 30-year time frame. Well, you know, it was good for a long time. A lot of advisors used it. A lot of clients used it, and it did serve its part for most people. But I always tell people, I don't think personally the 4% rule in today's world is as good as it used to be, right? Because so many things, like you were saying, Ron, change and get outdated. And I think the 4% rule is right up there with it, right? Because you look at currently, right? I mean, that was based off when historical inflation from 1913 was until approximately, you know, the early 2020s was around 3.1%, right? Well, I mean, with inflation the last few years, we've had a lot higher increases in inflation, so the adjustment on there won't necessarily be sufficient. As well, I mean, when you look at like Morningstar is one of the big companies that's came out and said it might even be in today's world closer to like 3%, right? The 3% rule. And for a lot of our clients that come in, they need typically more income out of those assets. So that's when we use things like some income annuities could be a good way sometimes to maybe pay out more on your money as well as guarantee it, right? For your lifetime could be a good way to offset that. Different types of management styles in the market, maybe dividend paying or other alternatives, I think are very important to kind of mix into a portfolio because typically most clients you're going to need around 4% or in some cases maybe more if possible. And we want to know it's going to last, right? Not just hopefully it lasts. So I think the 4% rule is a good way to kind of judge things and go off of it. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty and actually getting a custom income plan together, I do think there's a little bit more that goes into it to make sure that you're not just hoping, you know, you're going to be okay off 4% of your portfolio.
Well, there's something else that's not as famous, not as well known as the 4% rule, but but sometimes you hear people mention the 10-5-3 rule. What is that?
Yeah, so I've heard this one from time to time in a lot of the different rule books, right? And so a lot of people I have not heard say this back to me, I will say. So if you're listening to the show and this is your first time hearing that, don't worry, you're probably not alone out there. Typically what they would say is, the 10-5-3 rule started a long time ago, and basically what they're saying is over time, you can expect a 10% return from stocks, 5% return from bonds, and 3% approximately from cash. Now, all of those, right, are not guaranteed. They're just kind of saying those numbers. And, in most events, you could say those are probably pretty close when you look back over a long period of time. But one thing a lot of that doesn't factor in, right, is when you look at how volatile investments have been, especially with current times. And I always tell people there's always decades where there's volatility, right? I mean, when you look back, there's always been volatility. The market, stocks, all that has not been as steady as it always is. But one thing I look at, Ron, is when you look at most retirees that are retiring today or retired 5 years ago, when you look at, bonds, for example, right, they've been down. Most of the large bond funds have been down somewhere around 12% over the last 10 years, right? So I think a lot of people would be hopeful to get a 5% average return on their bond portfolio nowadays. And when you look at cash, now obviously, depending on when you're listening to this, cash has been paying a lot better as of recent, right, with CDs and money markets and things like that finally coming back with the way rates have been going. But on average, really, you look over again the last decade, what was a CD paying, right? 1% maybe, money markets maybe 0.25%. So, I mean, when you look at the average return on those, as well as the volatility we've seen in the stock market, really with COVID having a big up and down year, and then now, back in 2022, having basically the full year where stocks were down, pretty significant at points. And so I think it's something where a lot more needs to go into the financial planning, and not just saying, well, yeah, I'm going to put my money here and over time it's going to do well. Sometimes a little bit more groundwork needs to be laid, and making sure you're understanding your risk and understanding each of your asset classes, and just understanding how they might move together in some cases and might move inverse during different market situations.
You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Regari Financial, and we're talking about some rules that are perhaps outdated these days. And there is a general wisdom out there that a lot of people have shared over the years. You should move from stocks to bonds as you get older. Is that 100% true?
Yeah, I mean, when you read everything, right, Ron, like you said, that's kind of what you hear, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In some cases, I totally get the mindset behind that, and especially in years past. I mean, it made a lot of sense, right? Because traditionally speaking, stocks are more volatile than bonds. What a lot of people didn't realize, though, that I found out by talking with lots of different clients that have been coming on board with our firm, or just even our conversations we've been having, is they go, "Hey, Logan, I got a question for you, right? So back in 2022, I had 50% of my money in bonds and 50% of it in stocks because I'm maybe 65 years old. I just retired, and I have $500,000 of 401ks and IRAs and things like that, and I'm looking to be more conservative." Well, the problem was I looked at my statement or my online account, right, to check it, and it showed that basically everything I had was down last year, right? Yeah. And so when you look at a lot of people go, well, I thought bonds were safe, right? They weren't supposed to lose any money. Well, bond funds are one of those things that can be confusing for a lot of clients, because bonds are, traditionally speaking, Ron, they're less volatile. That doesn't mean there's no volatility, right? And so I think that caught a lot of people by surprise, because as they were moving more and more money when the market was volatile into those bond funds and things like that, they were still seeing volatility, right? And they're like, wait a minute, what happened? This is supposed to be that safe haven, so to speak, right? Or supposed to balance the portfolio out. So in my opinion, nowadays, I think you have to look at, I know with a lot of our clients, as they get older, you got to look at things like, annuities are a good fix, where right now you have, either fixed annuities that are paying a good competitive rate and they have safety of principal. You got fixed index annuities that can provide cash flow as well as safety. You also have other real estate investments. You have structured notes, different bond funds and things like that as well. But you got to look at sometimes more asset classes than just putting all your money in bonds nowadays, especially if you're looking for a more conservative position for your portfolio to try to balance it out, because the answer typically isn't just to stay in stocks, right? Because most of us aren't as comfortable with the market as we used to be, especially if we're approaching retirement or in retirement. So I think it's important to look at all of the other asset classes that are in there to truly balance the portfolio out and try to protect you as best possible moving forward.
Before we leave this part of our conversation today, there's just one more thing that I wanted to mention here, and it is kind of conventional wisdom with some folks that you're going to need less income in retirement than you needed while you were working. Well, again, that's another thing that's not necessarily true these days.
Yeah, I mean, again, possibly it's true, right? But more often than not, or in some other cases, you might need more income in retirement, right? A lot of people have different travel plans. Maybe they want to play golf every day, they want to volunteer more, or they might want a lot more income to be able to enjoy all those years of hard work, right? I hear some clients that are like, you know what? I have $1 million and I'd like to preserve it as much as possible and not spend it and leave it to the kids or grandkids, right? They want more of a legacy. Understandable. And then there's other clients, Ron, that come in and they go, well, you know what? I want to spend every last dollar I have and enjoy the heck out of it, right? And if there's anything left, then well, great. But so I think everybody has a little bit different vision of how they plan that retirement. And a lot of them, Ron, you'll hear this, right? I'm going to spend a lot of money during my early retirement. And then what I'll do is maybe from 65 to 75, I'll spend money and enjoy it. And then from 75 to, whenever, I'm going to, spend less. And a lot of people say that. And the problem is that it's a great thing to say, but when has, life never goes according to plan. And the problem is in retirement, medical costs and things like that, and unexpected expenses, and inflation, all of that stuff still is going to happen later on in retirement. Yep. So it could sound good talking about it, but I always ask people, when has your life ever gone exactly according to how you thought it would play out, right? Probably very rarely. And so why would retirement and retirement planning be any different? And so I think that's super important when you're putting together a strategy. That's part of what our team does, is when we're looking at what assets you have, how you plan to spend your ideal retirement, we're able to put together a plan that will help you have an idea of where your income is going to come from. How long will your income last? Are we taking the right risk in your retirement and helping to put together each of those pieces to help guide you throughout that retirement? And like we always say, to get you to and through retirement, and making sure you have that customized plan that's built for you and your family and that's built to last. So if you're one of those people out there listening to the show, maybe you're 50 years old, maybe you're 70 years old, or maybe you're all in between there, and you're looking for someone to help guide you and maybe help solve some of the problems or some of the concerns you have with your current retirement or upcoming retirement, I definitely think you'll get a lot of value out of coming to our discovery meeting, either at one of our offices or via Zoom, and just taking a deep dive into your situation with myself, Logan Sadler.
888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Your number to call for Regary Financial. Regary has two convenient locations in Hemet and also in Redlands. But you can get a conversation with Logan maybe on the phone or maybe via Zoom. Due to modern technology these days, Logan can meet with you any way it's convenient for you. And it's not going to cost you a penny and not going to obligate you to do anything at all. In fact, that very first get-together is more of a getting to know you session, and you will enjoy getting to know Logan Sadler. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call. 888-823-PLAN will make it happen for you. Call right now, leave a message with your name and phone number. You'll get a call back first part of the week, and you can set a convenient time. 888-823-PLAN. I'm Ron Stutz, along with Logan Sadler. We're talking about getting you to and through retirement, as always, here on the Financial Beat.
At the end of the day, no one truly understands your financial wants and desires better than you. That's why it's important to have financial independence. This means you can work when you want, you know exactly where your income is coming from, and most importantly, your finances are stable. If this sounds like something you want, well, text the word advice to the number 21000. And Logan Sadler and his team at Regary Financial can provide you with their free guide on achieving financial independence. The free guide will show you how to create an action plan for getting to where you want to be. It'll explain how to calculate a financial independence goal. And it'll define what an ICE egg is and why it's so important. Download it now by texting the word advice to the number 21000. Again, text the word advice to the number 21000 to gain your financial independence today.
ever find yourself skipping through countless songs trying to find the perfect one? Yeah, we've been there too, and know it can be frustrating. Much like skipping through the countless advertisements from other financial advisors, it can seem like there's so much misinformation. But here on the Financial Beat, you can rest assured we're providing you with the best information possible. So don't push skip on this show, because we have some important information coming up.
Welcome once again to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. Logan's on the radio doing this show and has been doing it for quite some time. And there are so many podcasts that have been built up. If you miss a particular show, there's a way that you can catch up. If you miss part of today's show, you can go and listen to the whole darn thing at your leisure whenever you decide. And Logan, tell us about your podcasts and also all those YouTube videos you have out there.
Yeah, for those of you listening to the show and like the sound of it and feel you get some value from it, you can head over to Podcast Land, whether that's Apple Music, Spotify, wherever it is you download podcasts, and you could type in The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and there's over 100 episodes up there for you to check out and give you some value. And again, you can listen to those wherever you're at and download them and click subscribe. We upload weekly to there, as well as we have the YouTube channel for those of you out there kind of like myself, where you like a little bit of a visual format to check out maybe on, what delaying Social Security might do for your financial plan, how to identify risk in your retirement plan, and lots of other different educational videos and content. You can head over to YouTube and type in The Financial Beat. And again, we upload new videos there weekly for you to check out. So go ahead and click subscribe and follow along.
Lots of ways to put all that information out there, and a lot of what Logan Sadler does is all about educating folks. And Logan, I think you do a pretty darn good job of it. The number to call if you'd like to have that conversation, once again, is 888-823-PLAN. Well, let's talk about client reviews. I know that you conduct reviews with your clients from time to time. You do it on a regular basis, and it's important to keep up to date on things and not just let things go. There are people out there listening to the show today who say that they have a financial advisor, someone helping them with their financial planning, and they haven't heard from him in a couple of years, maybe. And,
yep.
and maybe some people don't hear from him until they initiate the phone call themselves, which is really kind of sad. But periodic reviews with certain clients can look very different from your reviews with others. You probably have clients that fit into each of these categories that I'm going to mention here. Tell us what the conversations look like with these different types of people. First of all, there may be a guy out there that you would refer to as Sam, as in, play it again, Sam. What am I talking about here?
Yeah, you might be talking about someone there where no matter how many times you explain it to him or her, right, where maybe they're just going to forget it, right, and they want a further explanation probably every time they're going to come in, right, and no matter how many times you re-explain it or remind them of the plan or the investments or how things are headed, they might want it re-explained, right? So they want to understand how things work, the intricate parts of it. And I always tell people this is not a bad thing, right? A lot of advisors go, oh, I can't believe I got to explain it to him again. I think that's good, right? I think it's one of those things where if you're constantly asking questions and curious about your plan, to me, that shows, yeah, you're engaged, right? You care about how things are going, and it's typically a good relationship when you could always have that conversation about, remember, here's where things were going. And a lot of times, sometimes I'll just say, hey, do you remember, here's how your plan worked, we're taking this amount of income, and then all of a sudden they'll go, oh, yeah, okay, I remember that. So then they'll kind of be able to remember. But a lot of people need refreshing, right? Because a lot of people don't do this every day. And I think some advisors out there might get a little bit frustrated with clients here and there, and I tell, in my opinion, it's part of our job is to re-educate and continue to touch base and reevaluate the plan, and sometimes that that covers going over the plan, and I think that's okay because a lot of people out there, financial topics aren't their strong suit, so I think it's important to be able to continue to relay the information and go through it, and like you said in the opening there, Ron, I think personally, financial reviews are so important to a financial plan. And I find it interesting where there's some people out there, right, where, like you said, Ron, they might have $500,000 at an advisor and they haven't heard from them in a year or two, right? And I think it's so important to where if you have a financial advisor, that communication of being able to talk with them, every quarter or every 6 months or once a year or whatever your schedule as far as how your communication goes, I think is so important.
Yeah. Okay, there's another category of a client out there. and I may refer to her as Pollyanna. And I guess that one's pretty easy to figure out, right?
Yes, I think that is typically right where they are probably has no worries, right? Pollyanna probably has no worries. She's probably comfortable with her financial situation, has no plans or no really financial pain points, I guess you could say, as far as how her family life's going. Nothing's happening in the news. Nothing seems to really bother her overall. And it's funny, I actually like those clients. I wish I was more like that, where nothing ever bothered me, right? You're just always upbeat. Everything's good. Nothing on the news affects you. And I think that's something where it's a good thing in many ways, but I also feel it's always so important to identify there's always things going out there in the world. There's always tweaks and adjustments that might need to be made to the plan. And I always like to let them know, listen, I'm with you. I don't think the world's ending today or tomorrow. But what I do think is there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think making these adjustments or doing this or that might improve the plan and potentially help lower risk or increase the plan success rate down the road or whatever it is. And I always feel it's important to obviously not be the bearer of bad news, but to also understand that, hey, it's not the sun isn't shining every single day, right? So we got to make sure we're planning for those days when they do come.
Now, before we went on the air, you mentioned a character by the name of Hermie. And who is Hermie, and why does that sometimes show up in a client review?
Yeah, right. I mean, getting to know Hermie, I think that's someone that when you're sitting down to do a review, it's like pulling teeth, right? Where that he or she is just busy, and either consumed in their career or maybe they're retired and traveling the world. Like, for example, I have some clients that come on board with us, and they're maybe an RN. They're a doctor. They work for Edison, Costco, teachers. I mean, we have a wide base of clients that come from a lot of different areas. And it's funny because a lot of those professions I mentioned, they're busy, right? They're working, they're out there grinding and putting money away and really just trying to better themselves and get ready to retire. And all of a sudden, right, it's someone like myself calls and is like, hey, let's do a review. And a lot of times it might sound like one of the least important things you can do, but it is very important. I think being in touch with your financial advisor and understanding how things are set up and how it's going to impact your plan could be very, very crucial and important to the plan. But I also think, there's also people on the other side where they're retired, which I've talked about. I've named some clients on the show where maybe they retired and they're more busy than when they were working, right? A lot of people say when I hit retirement, I'll be able to slow down and focus more on things, but that's not always the case. You might be either volunteering or traveling. So I think it's always important to make time for your financial future, make time for your current financials. I think it's one of the more, again, money and finances isn't the most important thing in the world, but it is very important, and it does have an impact on a lot of the things we do day to day. So we got to make sure we're definitely taking a look at that and making sure we're situated correctly.
888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. That's your number for Gary Financial. We'll get back to that in a few minutes here. I'm Ron Stutz along with Logan Sadler. We're talking about client reviews, which are so essential. And you have clients, I'm sure, who are going to fit into this category. How about Kramer? Remember Kramer from Seinfeld? I mean,
I do.
How in the world would you describe this particular client?
Yeah, I love Seinfeld, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, he was always something that has something going on, right? Every time you see him, something major is changing in their life. New job, new house, new spouse, new dream. I mean, anything, right? I mean, there could be so many different changes. And I do have a lot of clients that fit into that, where I have some clients where I touch base with them every quarter. We'll have a meeting to review and things like that and go over their plan. Some of them it's maybe every 6 months, depending on where their situation looks like. But either way, I have some of them where things change. I mean, drastic, right? Where, like you said, a divorce or a new spouse or a new grandkid or moved houses or moved states. I mean, I've seen it all where it's like, man, they make me tired because so much is changing, right? And so they make me feel like my life's boring sometimes because not that much changes. So it's important to, if you are one of those clients, to, always, I think, leaning on the financial advisor to help guide you through a lot of those tough times. And I would say one of the best parts about this job, in my opinion, yes, I love the numbers. Yes, I love financials. I love investments. All that stuff is awesome and I like it. But I think personally, the one thing I like the most is the conversations that you have with your clients. A lot of the times they're very personable. They're very personal, and they're also very, very, in depth and sensitive areas. And I think I enjoy having those conversations and being able to guide and help people through those, whether it's big life changes or whether it's just trying to keep them updated on what's going on in the world.
we all know about Chicken Little, running around, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Do you have clients who fit into that particular category?
Yes, right. So I would say there's a lot of people out there where maybe, I don't even want to say doom or gloom, but I think I said this last week or the week before, but we all have a little bit of conspiracy theorist in us, right? I think some people try to say they don't, but we all do, right? I think there's always like, well, I don't know. Did you hear what's going on in the news, or did you read that article, right? And so I think there's always something out there where the sky is falling, right? But I think it's so important to understand that when you're looking at your financials, it's super important to not blow everything up and make these drastic, irrational decisions, right? And I always tell people one thing about panic or chaos, I would say. One thing about that is we don't typically think the clearest during that, right? So I always tell people that is not typically when you want to make big financial decisions, is either when something emotional or big is going on in your life, or if you're thinking about, you're watching the news and you're seeing all the stuff going on in the world and you're going, okay, I'm going to call so-and-so and do this today, right? No, I mean, you want to take time and think about things and making sure when you're making those decisions that they're the right decisions, not only for today, but for your future. And I think that's one of the biggest, important things out there as far as that goes, as far as the financial advisor and the relationships you should have. And a lot of you out there, some of these conversations, they might have been you, right? It might have been speaking to you directly. You might feel, and so I think it's just super important when you're out there looking around, or maybe you have old accounts or an old advisor that you've worked with in the past, and you haven't heard from them in a while. Maybe it's been 6 months or a year plus in some cases that you haven't heard from them, and you're just wondering, hey, am I still properly situated? Do I need to make any adjustments to my plan, or is there things I could be doing better to put myself in a better situation? I definitely think, giving us a call and coming in for our discovery meeting, how it starts is Ron gives you the number here in just a sec, and you give us a call and leave a voicemail, and someone from my office actually reaches out to you first thing Monday morning, and we'll schedule a time for us to get together via Zoom or in person, and we can see if what you have and where you're currently, what your current direction is, and see if there's anything that we could do to improve your plan and maybe add some value, but as well as see if we might be a better fit moving forward down the road to help guide you and transition you to and through retirement.
888-823-PLAN. That is a very important phone number. That is the number to get in touch with Regari Financial, with convenient offices in Hemet and Redlands. And that is the number to arrange a discovery meeting with Logan Sadler. You can sit down and talk with Logan about your financial situation and get some specific answers as it relates to your specific individual situation. And we're all different. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call if you'd like to have kind of an exploratory conversation, a getting to know you conversation that's not going to cost you one penny and not going to obligate you to do anything at all beyond that. 888-823-PLAN. We call it a discovery meeting. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make that happen. Logan Sadler is on the radio, and we'll have more coming up on today's edition of the Financial Beat right after this time out.
Did you know music is good for the heart? A study at a university in Italy showed that music helps promote a better cardiovascular system. But we also know that a sound financial plan is good for peace of mind. Keep listening to the Financial Beat so we can help you find a plan that both your head and your heart can agree on.
Here we go. We're back with more of the Financial Beat. Logan Sadler is on the radio. Go tell everybody you know. Hey, listen, if you'd like to get acquainted with Logan Sadler, he works with 3 different generations of some of the client families at Regari Financial. Many of those clients have been with the firm for more than 25 years, and Logan has seen just about every kind of financial scenario that comes along and would love to have an opportunity to get to know you and to dispense some good wisdom to you as far as money is concerned, your financial life, and you can do that in a discovery meeting that is not going to cost you anything at all, and there are no strings attached. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call if you'd like to get together via Zoom or maybe in one of the convenient offices. 888-823-PLAN. Call that number today. Leave your name and phone number. You'll get a call back, and 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it all happen. Hey, Logan, a little history lesson. We talk about things that have happened in history a lot on this show. 47 years ago, April 1st, 1976, Apple Computer Company was formed by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. And, Steve Jobs is the guy that you hear most about.
Yep.
And man, the Apple Computer Company has changed a lot of things for a lot of people.
So interesting how they've impacted so many people. Now, some of you out there listening might say, well, they've impacted us for the worst, right? Because maybe we rely too heavily on technology, and some out there might have definitely think it's just changed the way everything has worked in a positive way. So I think it's either way, it's just really marvelous what has happened over that time frame.
Let's talk about baby boomers. I would imagine that a large percentage of our audience listening to the show is composed of baby boomers. What percentage of your client base is part of the baby boomer generation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, probably, I wish I had an exact statistic on that, to be honest, because I'm kind of a nerd that way and I like statistics. But I would say probably 70% plus, right? Maybe more.
Yeah.
A lot of our clients are typically between the ages of 50 and 70 or so. And when you look at the baby boomer generation, I mean, that basically right from, correct me if I'm wrong, Ron, if you know it offhand, but I think it's like 1946 to 1964, I believe.
Yeah,
it's somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Give or take a year or two here or there, right?
Yeah.
But I believe that, so that basically say what, late 50s to early 70s or mid 70s is that baby boomer generation. And that's where a lot of our clients definitely line up in. And it's one of those things where it's such an important generation, right? I think there's such a lot of changing of the tides and things have changed throughout their time frame. And I always find it interesting, every generation out there, right? Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, baby boomers, all of them. I mean, I think it's always one of the more fascinating things to talk about. But most of the conversations I have throughout the day are typically with baby boomers are right there on the fringe.
It seems that there's a completely different set of financial challenges faced by baby boomers compared to what their parents faced. What are some of those unique challenges?
I would say, when you look around, right? I mean, I always tell people, especially when I'm meeting with baby boomers and you talk about it, look at the generations before you, right? And I think the generation before them, I mean, you look at that, I mean, a lot of them, they had, I don't want to say a simple retirement because nothing's ever simple, right? They obviously went through their struggles as well. But I mean, retirement planning in general, back then, I mean, you had a pension, right? You retired. You were either military, you worked for the post office, you worked for a railroad or something, right? A lot of those were pension based at that time.
Yeah.
So you retired, you got Social Security and a pension, right? I mean, it was basically it. Life expectancy wasn't super long, so you might have retired in your late 50s or early 60s, and life expectancy then was late 50s, early 60s, right? So
Yeah.
You didn't live a long time typically at that time frame. And so I think it was a little bit simpler as far as how to construct a retirement plan. Nowadays, the baby boomer generation is one of the first one with that many people going out in a retirement world where they had to save their own money, right? They might have had a pension here or there, but I mean, most of the people, when they're getting ready to retire, I would say some of the biggest financial challenges they face is longevity, right? People are living a lot longer now than they used to, right? That's why life expectancy is up. Depending on which chart you read, there's somewhere, in the mid to late 80s right now is typically about life expectancy. And then you look at things like long-term care, right? A lot of people weren't living as long back in the day, and so there was not as much need for care facilities and extra care down the road as you're still alive, but your health's not as ideal. As well as income planning, right? There's a lot of different income planning and structures you got to put on that. And then I would say number 4 there, I guess, would be is taxes, right? I mean, I think a lot of those 4 complex areas there have really changed the way that people retire or the concerns or fears they have about retirement.
Yeah, and I know that you have seen just about every situation there is out there financially, as I mentioned earlier today on the show, and you've gotten to know a lot of baby boomers. Mm-hmm. Do you find that there are specific financial fears or concerns among the baby boomers generation that you hear over and over again?
Yeah, what's funny, Ron, is I always talk about, I give you guys an inside peek here at what our discovery meeting is like, and basically, I have a series of questions and things I ask just to get to understand you and your situation and what it you're really trying to accomplish. And one of the things is, can you name your 3 primary financial concerns, right? So everybody I've ever met with has answered that. And it's funny. So yeah, a lot of them I would say are somewhat repetitive, which I always tell people isn't annoying or isn't unusual. It's typically a lot of our clients are in that same age range. And so they typically have similar goals or fears or concerns, right? So I would say the 3 most common that I hear personally are, and not in any order, but typically it's taxes, right? Hey, Logan, I've accumulated a lot of money in my retirement accounts, and I have $500,000 and I only have maybe 20,000 of it's Roth, right? The rest of it's all taxable. Yeah. How am I supposed to navigate taxes throughout retirement, right? I think that's normally one of the biggest things is taxes. Number 2, which I think is always still there and one of the more common ones still, is running out of money, right? Is, okay, I've accumulated $500,000 or $2 million or whatever the amount is, but I need it to last, I'm 62 years old. I need it to last maybe 20 or 30 years plus. So how can I construct that? So I still think running out of money is one of the big ones. And one of the ones that's become even more common now than back in the day, I would say, is long-term care. I don't want my kids to have to take care of me. I don't want to be a burden on them. And I know I have some assets, but I might not necessarily have assets that I want to spend on long-term care. Right? I'd rather leave those behind to my kids or charities or whatever it is. So I think those are the 3 most common that I hear. There's a few others I could throw in there, but those are probably the 3 most common. And I think that's one of the things where we've got a good system in place where we're able to help address those concerns and making sure we're solving to make sure your plan is reflecting what concerns you have and what your fears are, and making sure we're able to, somewhat conquer those and get over that hurdle.
I'm not surprised by any of that. See, I've learned.
Dang it! I thought I was giving you inside information.
I've learned a little bit after doing this show with you for a while, for sure. So, all of that, not surprising at all. 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN, your number to call for Logan Sadler and the folks at Regari Financial. If you'd like a discovery meeting, I'll give you that number again coming up in just a few minutes here. But we're talking about baby boomers. And Logan, in general, what are some of the mistakes that you see made by baby boomers when it comes to their retirement planning?
That's a great question, Ron. I would say one of the more common ones I would say is typically, they get ready to retire. And a lot of them have accumulated maybe even wealth, right? They have money put away. But what I see very often is not having a written income plan, right? Where I'll say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you guys have, $600,000. Number one, how much approximately do you need each month to pay your bills and live the life you want to live? A lot of times they're not really sure what that number is, which is okay. And then I'll ask them, well, where are you getting income from? And a lot of the times I hear, well, I have an IRA with, $700,000 in it or $500,000 in it, and I just take, whenever we need money, I just kind of take money from it, right? And so I always tell them that's one of those ways where it's just not very efficient, and it's one of those things where a lot of the times, if we take money and put it in the bank and it's just there and we take from it, a lot of the times we end up running out of money or taking too much at the wrong times and not understanding the actual impact on the overall retirement plan. And so I think not having a written income plan, a lot of people don't realize how, in my opinion, how dangerous it could be to your overall plan, because you're not really structuring any sort of income. And as well as you're not really sure how much you're taking each year or how much you need each year or how long it could last by just keeping that up. And so I think not having an income plan that's written and really mapped out is very, very common. And it's one of those things, again, I think is very dangerous. The next I would say, Ron, is not understanding their risk in retirement, right? I think a lot of them don't understand, well, I've been in the market forever. What's wrong with the market? And I always tell people, nothing's wrong with the market, right? I think it's a great place for most of us to have, maybe all of our money or large portions of our money in some cases. But I definitely think, depending on what income goals we need, it's definitely a good idea in most cases to look at some alternatives, right? You got annuities out there that are good, that can be good for safe and guaranteed income, or maybe even guaranteed returns in some cases. You have structured notes, you got real estate investments, you got different stocks or bonds or options. I mean, there's so many different ways out there to create some yield, as well as with CDs and money markets and all that stuff, I think, nowadays. So there's a lot of different ways to spread out risk, and a lot of people aren't aware of, if they don't have a written income plan and they're just riding this, whatever they're riding their investments out, and they're just pulling money whenever they need, it doesn't really create that typical, well structured and very high success rate type of retirement. So I think those are probably the two most common things that I would see, Ron, where they're making those little mistakes, and they typically could be very easily readjusted to make sure it has a better effect on the plan.
Okay, this last question that I want to ask you here about baby boomers, I'm wondering already if it's going to reflect perfectly what you said a couple of questions ago. In your opinion, what are the top 3 things that baby boomers should make sure they've addressed as part of their retirement plan? I'm wondering if this is going to match up with the specific financial fears and concerns we talked about.
Well, now I'm trying to remember what I've said, right? So, no. So what I would say, my opinion is, I think every good income plan, every good retirement plan starts with an income plan. Right. I think I always tell people, as well as, I think before you get to the nitty gritty, obviously, is what envisioning your retirement looks like is a big one. But as far as the actual analytics to the plan, I think number one is income, right? How much income do I need? How much income can I generate off my current assets, as well as how long could it potentially last, right? I think starts with the income plan. Number 2, I would say, is taxes, right? How much tax flexibility and diversification do I have? Do Roth conversions make sense? Does using tax-free life insurance in some cases make sense? Charitable gifting, all of that stuff I think could look into how does your taxes play into your overall retirement. And then the next I'm going to throw 2 in there, which is longevity and care planning, right? I think those 2 things are going to run in those as far as the third biggest hurdle to make sure you want to have covered in your retirement plan. And those 3 are actually part of our 5 pillars of retirement planning, right? You guys have always heard me talk about that on the show. I always talk about income planning, investment planning, tax planning, healthcare planning, and legacy planning. So 3 of the pillars are, I think, the most crucial is income planning, tax planning, and longevity and care planning in there. Because again, those are some of the biggest risks that a lot of you that are baby boomers that are going to face. And so I think that's one thing our firm does well is we really help sit down and we work with, again, a lot of baby boomers out there. So I mean, if you're 50 to 70 years old, give or take, right? And you're looking for a financial advisor or looking really just to get a plan together and really make sure it's structured to help last the rest of your retirement. Again, maybe you're worried about running out of money. Maybe you're worried about how taxes are going to impact your retirement, or maybe even how they'll affect your legacy by leaving money behind. I think it's definitely time you give us a call and come in for our discovery meeting. You might have, $300,000, you might have $3 million. And I think either way, we'll have a good conversation and be able to give you some good advice, some value, as well as show you how valuable we feel we could be to your retirement plan by helping guide you and your family throughout your retirement.
Give Regary Financial a call today. Don't wait. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN. You can arrange a discovery meeting with Logan Sadler. Yep, you're going to talk to the same guy that you hear on this show every single week. And again, that number is 888-823-PLAN. Call that number today. Leave a message with your name and phone number. You'll get a call back first part of the week, and you can get together at a convenient time. Maybe just a phone call, or maybe it might be a Zoom connection, or maybe you might want to come into one of the offices. 2 convenient locations, Hemet and also Redlands. But wherever you are in Southern California today or anywhere around the world, if you want a conversation with Logan Sadler, get to know him a little bit, have him get to know you, some more specifics about your individual situation, then you can decide if you'd like to pursue it, if you'd like to work together. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make all that happen. Don't put it off. Procrastination is not your friend. I'm Ron Stutz along with Logan Sadler. You're listening to The Financial Beat, and the beat will go on in just a moment.
Are you concerned about living too long? Do you worry about the cost of health care in the future? These are a few of the signs that permanent life insurance could be for you. Logan Sadler of Regary Financial will help you recognize the rest of the signs. Text the word ADVICE to the number 21000 to download this free guide to understanding permanent life insurance. Text ADVICE to 21000. Permanent life insurance isn't for everyone, but it could make a dramatic difference in your financial life. Text ADVICE to 21000 to find out if that's the case. Every time you venture up on stage for a round of karaoke, you're taking a pretty big risk that the crowd isn't going to like your singing. Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. However, one place you don't want to take any risky chances is with your financial plan. At Regary Financial, we can help build a plan that minimizes risk and maximizes security. Give us a call at 888-823-PLAN to start a conversation. That's 888 888-823-7526. While we may not be able to help with the singing, we can at least protect the assets that matter most.
Serenity now! Serenity now!
What is that? When my blood pressure gets too high, the man on the tape tells me to say,
Serenity now!
Does your financial plan have you constantly needing to calm down? Find your serenity now and keep listening to The Financial Beat.
We're back now with more of the Financial Beat. Logan Sadler is on the radio, as always, talking about getting you to and through retirement. My name is Ryan Stutz. Always an honor to hang out with Logan on this show. Logan works with 3 different generations of client families at Brigari and is all about getting you to and through retirement in the best way possible. They have terrific partnerships with local CPAs, attorneys, real estate agents, mortgage lenders, Medicare specialists as well, to help offer you well-rounded guidance in all things financial. And you can get a discovery meeting, no cost and no obligation involved. 888-823-PLAN. You've been listening to the show. Maybe it's time to go ahead and make that phone call and have a conversation with Logan one-on-one. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. Now, you can have just a phone conversation with Logan if you like, but more likely a Zoom connection, or you might even want to come into one of the convenient offices in Hemet or Redlands. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to arrange it. And all you got to do right now is just call, leave a message with your name and phone number. You'll get a call back from the good folks at Brigari Financial first part of the week. Hey, time now to go to the mailbag because we have some great questions as always, Logan, and I know this is one of your favorite parts of the show. Lil,
Yeah, it is.
Lil is in L.A., and she has a question. With all the bank failures I've been hearing about, and boy, this has been in the news left and right lately.
Yeah.
She wants to know, should she be thinking about somewhere else to keep her money?
Yeah, great question, Lil. And like you said, there has been a lot going on out there, especially when you're watching the news and see like you said, what's going on with the overall banking and that whole sector right now. What you're seeing. One thing I would tell people is, most of the major banks out there, right, or most of the banks that most people bank with, most of them are still very, very strong, right? I think a lot of them have, due to regulations and things like that back in 2008, during the last financial crisis, I think a lot of them have learned their lesson or have been able, with regulations, have been structured where things are just a little bit more, they have to invest their money typically more conservative, have more cash on hand. I mean, a lot of that stuff has been done. One thing I would say is, I think it's still a good place to keep money moving forward for most people. I would say one thing you don't want to do, though, is have too much money in the bank, right? Because we all know how FDIC coverage works, $250,000. You typically don't want to have more than that in any one bank just because, you never know. But I would say overall, most of the banks out there are still very strong. And I would say if you have questions on your current bank or things like that, there's a lot of research. You could either give us a call or a lot of things you could do on your own and research about the bank and how they're invested. I think a lot of that's important, but I get the concerns, I get the panic, I totally get all of that, but I would definitely always tell people it's important to stay calm, look around and look at, out of the hundreds and hundreds of banks out there, right? If 2, 3, or 4 of them are having some issues, it's not obviously fun, but it's something where the majority of the other banks out there are still very strong, but it's important to just understand, where your money's at and what the importance of being diversified is and making sure, again, being a financial advisor, we can kind of help guide you a little bit better as far as maybe some other areas you might be able to put your money, like maybe treasuries or things like that might be more secure. So if you have questions further, I'd love to dive in, but I think in general, it's still a good place to put money and still a safe place to put it. And I would just do a little bit more research on your current bank you're using.
Got another question here from Tommy in Fontana, and I'm not sure we've had a question from Fontana before. Tommy says, I'm hoping to retire in about 2 years when I turn 57. My wife doesn't think it's feasible, but I think it could be done. What do I need to consider before retiring at such a relatively young age?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question there. I think that's something we love to cover on this show, obviously. And I think when you're looking to retire, when you turn approximately 57, I think there's a lot that goes into that, right? And I always say, it's not for me to say you can't do it or can do it, but I always say it's important to understand what the potential risks are as well as the potential benefit. As those of you who've been listening to the show for a while know, I think everything has pros and cons, and this is no different, right? I think when you're looking at your overall a retirement age that is very young to retire. Most of the average statistics out there are showing, I believe, women retiring somewhere around 62 and males somewhere in that 64 range. So, retiring in the early or late 50s would definitely be on that earlier end. And I think the biggest risk associated with retiring early is obviously the number one I would say is your money has to last longer, right? The earlier you retire, the less you might have paid into a pension, the less you might have paid into Social Security, less you might have contributed to 401ks, as well as the longer your assets now have to produce income and last longer, right? So when you look at retiring 5 years earlier, let's just say, that means that portfolio and your income has to last 5 years longer, as well as it had 5 years less of funding, right? So I think a lot of people don't really understand that part of it. They think, yeah, okay, I'm probably leaving some money on the table, but they don't understand that there's two sides of it, right? Also, you're putting less money in and you're taking more money out for potentially a longer period of time. So that would be the number one risk I would say that most retirees have of retiring young, is that worry of, well, I've put less money in and I'm probably going to take, more money out over a longer period of time. So is my portfolio and my income plan feasible? So I would say that would be the number one risk out there. And that's one thing I always like to show clients of, if you're going to retire. We have a lot of software we use with clients when we're doing a financial plan to show them, hey, if we did retire 2 years earlier, here's what that could potentially do to the plan, as well as if we retired 3 years later, here's how much it could potentially help the plan. And I think that all starts with, Tommy, your goals, what types of income you need to produce, as well as what types of assets you have, right? Because being under 59 and a half, there's certain plans you can't really take money out of until you turn 60 or 59 and a half. So I think it's important to kind of run through all those risks. And we've had a lot of clients that have pulled the plug and retired at 55 or 60 or 58. And I think it's important to, weigh out all of the pros and cons and make sure you've done the proper planning well before pulling the plug, and making sure it's something that's feasible and going to be able to be predictable and last the length that you're going to need it to last.
You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and one more question today, Logan. It's from Howard in Diamond Bar. And Howard says, I don't understand why the government is forcing me to take money out of my IRA when I don't need it, simply because I've reached a certain age. Why is this happening?
Yeah, Howard's not too happy, right? So,
no, not at all.
For those of you out there wondering what he's talking about, right? So I think what he's talking about here is RMDs, so required minimum distributions. For those of you out there, if you're already over the age of 72, you've probably have already been taking these. They just passed a new law called Secure Act 2.0. So now basically anybody 73 or turning 73 is going to have to take a percentage of your qualified account. So anybody that has a 401k, old 401k, IRA, things like that, you have to take what's called a required minimum distribution out. A lot of you forget that your money in those accounts is probably, in most cases, is all taxable, right? So meaning you haven't paid any tax on it. So if you have $1 million, let's say, and Uncle Sam says, okay, just an example, let's say you got to take out 3%. That means $30,000 of income is going to come in that year that you're going to have to pay taxes on, whether you wanted to or not, right? That's what the required minimum distribution is. Now, again, I have a chart I could provide for you guys if you have questions on what the RMDs look like. There's an actual percentage based off each birthday. It goes up every year. It goes up a little bit by percentage. And so, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it is required. Now, once you start taking it, Howard, there is some alternatives out there like Roth conversions or different ways where you could potentially lower future RMDs, as well as looking at a way to use charitable gifting and stuff like that. But there's really no other way around it other than doing some planning beforehand. So if you're one of those clients that's getting closer to RMD age and you're wondering some strategies that might be able to help you out beforehand, or if you're currently taking RMDs and wondering what you could be maybe doing differently to structure it more tax efficient, definitely think it's important to give us a call. And again, a good financial advisor should be able to kind of walk you through that. And hopefully that answers your question, Howard, as far as what an RMD is. And if you have any further questions on that, always feel free to give us a call.
If you have any questions about RMDs or anything that we've talked about on today's show, how would you like to get an answer for absolutely free, one-on-one, with specifics related to your individual financial situation? All you got to do for a discovery meeting is call 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN, your number to call to reach Regary Financial. Now, Regary has two convenient offices, one in Redlands, one in Hemet, and you can come into one of those offices and have a conversation with Logan Sadler, sit down and talk face-to-face. You can do that virtually via Zoom if you like, or maybe you might want to just pick up the phone and give Logan Sadler a call and ask a few basic questions. You can have the conversation that way, but Logan Sadler is willing to do this to accommodate you and is not going to charge you a cent and not going to obligate you to do anything at all. So make this phone call, 888-823-PLAN. Hope you've written down that number already. And the best thing to do so you don't have to rely on your memory is go ahead and call it right now, 888-823-PLAN. Logan Sadler is the Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial, serving you wherever you are in Southern California. Hey, we appreciate your listening to the show today. Logan, it's been my pleasure to hang out with you for a while.
Yeah, always my favorite day of the week here. Hopefully we gave a lot of you listeners out there that have been listening. And again, I've been meeting with a lot of you lately. And so it's been great seeing you guys in person or over Zoom and having those conversations and being able to provide the value. Because again, at the end of the day, the whole point of this show is to spread the word, give out some good educational information, but also to hopefully, get the opportunity to connect with a lot of you out there. And we have done that. So I appreciate it. And thank you for the support. And we're going to be back here next week with another show. And I'm already looking forward to it.
Join us again for the next edition of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. Have a great week.
Regary Financial and Insurance Services, Inc. and BD Financial Group, Inc. are separate and independent entities. The information provided in this presentation is presented for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, tax, or legal advice, nor does it constitute an offer or solicitation to buy or sell any securities.